When most people think about mobile gaming, they might imagine simple puzzle games like Candy Crush or massive hits like Genshin Impact. But before the mobile gaming scene exploded with today's big names, there was a French company called Gameloft, quietly dominating flip phones and early smartphones. You might not remember them by name, but if you've ever played a knockoff version of famous console games on your Nokia phone, there's a good chance it was from Gameloft. Whether you love their near clones of Call of Duty, Halo, or Grand Theft Auto, Gameloft's titles were at one point among the most popular on mobile. This video explores the remarkable story of how Gameloft rose to become a major force in mobile gaming and why it ultimately lost ground in a rapidly changing market. First, we need to understand how Gameloft got started. The company was founded in 1999 by Michael Guillemot, who was also the co-founder of Ubisoft. At that time, mobile gaming was pretty much limited to simple titles like Snake on Nokia phones. Yet, Gameloft believed cell phones could do so much more. They saw a future where playing games on your phone wouldn't be a novelty, it would be mainstream. So their first step was to create Java-based game for early flip phones, and while most of those games were basic by today's standards, they showed Gameloft's willingness to push phone hardware to the limit. They weren't just creating versions of Tetris or Breakout, they were trying to replicate more complex experiences on the simplest of devices. But what really set Gameloft apart was their formula, and it went something like this. Take a popular console game concept like Halo, Grand Theft Auto, or Call of Duty and design a mobile version that felt inspired by those hits. They never advertised their titles as direct copies, of course, but the resemblance was clear. If you saw modern combat, you would think, this feels a lot like Call of Duty. If you played Nova, you might say, this reminds me of Halo. Now, why did they do this? Because there was also a massive gap in the market. Console makers weren't paying much attention to mobile, so Gameloft stepped in and provided a light version of what people wanted. And it worked. For many gamers, this was the closest you could get to a console experience on your phone, even if that phone was a tiny flip model with a keypad for controls. Everything changed around 2008 when Apple's App Store launched, followed by Google's Android market. Suddenly, the entire mobile phone landscape shifted. Companies no longer needed deals with carriers or phone manufacturers to distribute games. Instead, they could publish directly to consumers worldwide. This single change opened the floodgates to new apps and new games, and Gameloft was right there at the forefront. They quickly adapted their biggest hit to the iPhone and Android, making them more sophisticated with better graphics and smoother touch controls. Seeing modern combat sandstorm on the App Store was an exciting moment for many gamers. It was a first-person shooter on a device that until recently was used mainly for calling, texting, and maybe checking emails. At this point, Gameloft was at the top of its game, producing near-console quality titles that were super affordable, often just a few dollars each compared to $60 console games. Between about 2010 and 2012, Gameloft's catalog exploded. It included titles like Dungeon Hunter, which is a Diablo-style hack and slash, Order and Chaos, an MMORPG reminiscent of World of Warcraft, and Asphalt, their signature racing franchise similar to Need for Speed. If you look at the best-selling or top-grossing apps on either the iOS or Android back then, Gameloft's name was usually somewhere near the top. They pushed the limits of mobile graphics, and for a while, it seemed like their future was bright. But here's where the story takes a turn. As smartphones became more powerful and more widespread, the competition ramped up. Major publishers who originally dismissed mobile as casual gaming started to pay attention. Activision eventually released Call of Duty Mobile, EA brought sports franchises and rail racing to smartphones, and other big studios began porting or creating official spin-offs for their popular games. That eliminated Gameloft's core advantage of offering console-inspired clones. If you had a chance to play the real thing from a recognized developer, why settle for a near copy? At the same time, the shift toward free-to-play was gaining momentum. Instead of charging an upfront cost, game makers realized they could make more money, sometimes significantly more, by letting players download a game for free, then charging them for in-game items or faster progression. Companies like King, Supercell, and Tencent mastered its models, raking it hundreds of millions of dollars. Gameloft didn't immediately embrace free-to-play. After all, they built their brand around premium titles. But they would eventually have to follow suit. When Gameloft did adopt free-to-play, they tried to weave it into their existing franchises like Asphalt and Dungeon Hunter. New players loved that they didn't have to pay upfront, but long-time fans felt frustrated by gameplay that now included frequent prompts for in-app purchases, limited play sessions, and resource grind. In a game like Asphalt, for example, you used to pay once and unlock the whole experience. But in a free-to-play Asphalt, you might find yourself waiting for fuel to recharge or tempted to buy premium currency to upgrade vehicles. In theory, free-to-play was a viable path forward, but Gameloft wasn't the only company going that route, and others executed it with more success. That meant Gameloft's new approach often felt caught between pleasing old fans who wanted premium and attracting new players who expected free with microtransactions. And you can't be everything to everyone. The newly imposed revenue goals added pressure to produce more profitable titles, sometimes at the expense of creativity or polish. So where does that leave Gameloft today? The company is still around, releasing updates and new mobile games, often under the free-to-play model. They've expanded into more casual or licensed territory, developing titles for brands like Disney. But it's a far cry from their glory days. For many long-time mobile gamers, Gameloft is more of a nostalgic memory. The studio that brought us console-like action when no one else did. If you look at any discussion about Gameloft's newer game, you'll often see people lamenting the old Gameloft, known for the full-featured premium mobile games, no longer exists. The transformation of the entire industry, the rise of the official console game ports, pivot to free-to-play, and the corporate upheaval under Vivendi have all contributed to Gameloft's diminished status.